Now we are going to look at two examples of a trading strategy. Example 1. For this trade, we want to trade the retracement of the first move of the non-farm payrolls. Before we go into the details, let me first give you some background about non-farm payrolls. So non-farm payrolls is a job employment number released on the first Friday of every month, and the reason why this number has such a big impact on the markets is because this number is what they call a leading indicator. Leading indicators are an indicator that happens before an actual market move. So in contrast, a lagging indicator is an indicator that happens after the market move. So leading indicators are generally more appreciated than lagging for obvious reasons, because a leading indicator will give us a signal on when to buy and sell or when to execute a trade. So non-farm payrolls will elicit a huge move in the market. The market reason, the value of this trade, is that we assume the first move of the non-farm payrolls figure is going to be exaggerated. So if our asset spikes up a lot during this move, we are assuming that it's overbought. And similarly, if it goes down a lot during this move, we are assuming that it's oversold. Why do we assume that? During the release of this figure, the market is very turbulent. It's very difficult for anyone to price a fair value of the market based on the new information that's out. Well, in fact, fair value is a concept that strictly doesn't really exist, but we use the term to express what we feel is the true value to an asset. So how do we approach this idea when we are doing our preliminary research? We need to look for a few things. Let me skip this slide first. Okay, how do we approach the idea? We're looking for persistent inefficiencies with identifiable costs. I'll break it down into 6 things. The first thing, market prudency. Does it make sense from an economy and market's point of view that the asset will be overbought and oversold during NFP? Yes. Is it identifiable? Yes. This is important. If your inefficiency is not identifiable, it is usually not quantifiable. And if it's not identifiable and quantifiable, we won't know whether the inefficiency is the one that's causing the market to behave a certain way. And if that's the case, we aren't able to trade our robots with conviction. The third thing is it a one-off or persistent inefficiency? Well, NFP happens every month, so it's persistent. The fourth thing, transaction cost. Alright, sometimes in the market, there are inefficiencies that exist, and they do exist for a reason. Sometimes it is just too expensive for any trader or any fund to rectify the inefficiency, because the transaction cost of doing the trade is simply too high. Hence, if we have an inefficiency, we need to understand if this inefficiency exists because of the high transaction cost or not. The fifth thing is survivorship bias. I'm going to give you an example of survivorship bias. Let's say that you collate data about companies that did well over the last 50 years. Then you say, hey, alright, I guess companies who have survived in the last 50 years, who experience factor A and factor B and factor C, tend to do better in the long run compared to companies in the last 50 years that survive factor C, D, and E. There could be a problem here. It's possible that most of the companies that are involved in that has factor A, B, and C, they don't do well and they get delisted from the stock exchange. So there isn't any information on them. So the data you collected is incomplete data. The winners that has factor A, B, and C, they are the survivors of this incomplete data. Hence we call it survivorship bias. How does this apply to us? For this trade wise, there is no survivorship bias, but in general, we need to understand if our data that we obtain is complete. And I'm not talking about price data now, I'm talking about information, any kind of information. We need to make sure that no one has filtered away part of the information that is important to us. Next point, future structural change. Alright, what I'm saying is there going to be a change in the financial markets that will completely change this trade? I will use an example from cryptocurrencies. Let's say that you are a Bitcoin trader. What if in 1 year's time there's going to be regulation coming out that bans Bitcoin forever? If that's the case, your trade idea will be useless, and all the work you put into your trading idea, your testing and so on and so forth, is going to be going to waste. We should make sure that our trading idea is a going concern, that it can exist in at least the near future. Note that for now, we are not thinking about the quantitative aspect yet of the idea. We're just looking at certain variables and loosely trying to identify if this idea is viable. Now I'm going to go back to our previous example. We skipped this slide just now. Okay, this example 2, I'm just going to go through it really quickly. Example 2, I'm looking at an idea that combines both statistical and macroeconomic factors. What I'm saying is that the Aussie NZD currency pair should be mean reverting in a stable macroeconomic environment. So my assumption for this trade, for this idea, is that the Australian and New Zealand economies are generally similar, although of course you can argue otherwise. And hence, if they are similar, and that their macroeconomic environment, aka interest rates, central bank action, if there's a stable macroeconomic environment, the RBA is not trying to target currency levels and so on and so forth, AUD, NZD should be similar. So they should be mean reverting within a range, and the trade will be to sell AUD NZD at the top of the range and to long AUD NZD at the bottom of the range. Of course, this trade is clearly more complicated than it seems, and will require us to have a at least basic understanding on the macroeconomic factors revolving the currency of these two countries. I'm not going to go through these 6 points with trading idea 2. Maybe you can do that yourself for practice. Alright, moving to the end. Simple is good. Keep it simple. Simple is the ultimate sophistication. Not trying to be cliche here, but it is the truth with trading robots. Think about it. If you have a complicated robot, if it works, we don't really know why. If it doesn't work, we don't really know why as well. So we are like walking blind. We are simply powerless in using this trading robot, and we are letting the robot lead us. The key to being the good trader is understanding your robots, understanding how it behaves in different environments, and knowing when to deploy them, when to modify them, when to disable them. Therefore, simple is good. And don't be too strict with the vetting process.